Hello everyone, welcome back to UiPath tutorials. So in this video I am going to show you some of the questions on UI activity and properties. Now if you are watching my first video of UiARD sessions, then I'll suggest you to go to my playlist where you will find a UiARD exam preparation playlist where you will have a different sessions on different topics. Now I have already covered the activities and properties questions, but let's continue it with some more questions. Going back to the questions, so the question one is developers trying to run below workflow without using a open browser activity. Now this is a workflow basically that is designed by the developer. Now he's trying to run it without using a open browser activity. That means the browser is not open. This is the figure one where activity is used in try block. Let me maximize it. Okay, now if you see it in the try catch block, in the try block basically we have a sequence and the right line where the start is mentioned. We have used the type into Google where the Wipro is passed as a value. Again a right line with a value and. We can see the properties. The continue on error is true here and the text is Wipro activated true. Simulate is unchecked from here. So what we have to check it here in the property, we have to remember these things, what is checked and what is unchecked. Now just moving to the next screenshot where in the catch block the developer has put the right line activity with the value exception occurred. Now basically what is the output of above workflow? Now if the developer run this workflow without using an open browser activity, that means no application is launched or a Google is not launched in a browser, then what will happen in that case? So the options are basically A is start. In the output panel, is it print start only? B, it will print start and end. C is basically exception occurred, and D is start and exception occurred. Now if you see the answer is start and the end. Now why it is? Let me open the studio first to show this particular activity inside the workflow. Now you see this is our sequence and this is our try catch. I have used the right line here and the type into. In the properties, if you see the continue on error is true here, and that means if the error occur to this type into activity, the bot will not going to throw any exception and will not go to the catch, but it will going to continue this activity and will execute a next activity which is right line. And now if I'm going to run this particular sequence, we can see it what is basically the output of this particular workflow. Now it's taking some time. Why? Because it's a 30-second timeout basically for each control by default. So I have not given any timeout here, so it will take at least 30 seconds to check whether this element is present or not. Now if it is not present, it will see the property, okay, the continue on error is checked basically, and it will move to the next activity to print it the end in the output panel. Now as the bot is completed, we can see the output where you see it printed this right line for start, and then it executed this, and then it comes to the end. Now this is the answer basically. But if I'm not going to select this, then what will happen in that case? Let me run it again. Now it will again check for 30 seconds. Let's wait for 30 seconds, then we will check the result in the output panel. Almost completed. It is on the type into activity as it print the start. Basically it is here. Then let's see the output. Now it is printing start and exception occurred. If in the question this continue on error is not checked, then in that case the the correct option is basically it is start. And then when it comes to here, the bot couldn't find this type into text box because the browser is not launched, then it will throw an exception and it will going to print this exception occurred. So the output will be start and exception occurred in that case when the continue on error is checked, not checked, sorry, not checked. I hope this is clear. Let's move to the next question. This is what the answer is, start and end. Now you see a developer configured the properties for a click activity on an element inside a web page as shown below. An animation on the web page never completed loads, but the element specified in the click activity does. Now if you see the continue on error is checked to true, wait for ready is interactive. So interactive means whenever the element is interactive means the whole page is not loaded, but that particular element is interactive means the bot can put that particular value to it, either it's a click or type into. Now you see it's a continuous true, the wait for ready is interactive. Now let's move to the question. What occurs when this click activity executes? Now in this case the answer is, let's see the all the option first. A is timeout error occurs without clicking on the element. Now the timeout error occurs definitely without clicking on an element. Okay, this we can consider, but let's move to the B part first, because definitely the timeout error will be occurred if the bot will not able to find it. Now wait 10 seconds before clicking on the element. It waits for a 10 second before clicking on the element. No, basically if you see the timeout of this target window, which is empty right now, that means the default timeout is 30 seconds. So this is wrong. It cannot wait for 10 seconds, it should wait for 30 seconds. Now let's move to the C. Continues to the next activity after 30 seconds. This is correct, it will going to continue to the next activity because it have to wait for 30 seconds. Here the default timer is 30 seconds without clicking on the elements, without clicking on the elements. Why? You see the continuous error is checked here, it is true, right? It is true, that means it will wait till 30 seconds. If the bot is not able to find it as an interactive, then without clicking on the element it will come to the next element. This seems correct, right? Let's move to the D also. Element is clicked once it is fully loaded. No, this is correct, this is wrong exactly. The element is clicked once it is fully loaded. Now if you see the question, a developer configure the property for a click activity on elements inside a web page as shown below. Now animation on the web page never completely loads, but the element specified in the click activity does. So basically the web page is not completely loading, but the element specified in the click activity does. But again, if that page is fully loaded but the element is not interactive even, then the bot will going to throw an error and it will going to continue to the next activity because the property of the continue on error is true. Now that's basically a correct answer. C, where continue to the next activity at 30 seconds without clicking on the element because it is failed there. It's not even clicking on it because the exception occurred. That's why it's not able to click on the element. The answer is C basically for it. Let's move to the next part. Question 3. Question 3 is a developer plans to create a process to automate a web application. Now the web application requires HTML buttons and text boxes to be loaded. Although some assets may still be loading, the robot should perform the UI actions once the button and text boxes are loaded. Which properties should be configured? Now the whole question is basically what it wants. The developer don't want that the whole page should be loaded, but when only the text boxes and the buttons are loaded, at least bot should perform the actions on it. So for that, what option I need to select? I need to select the timeout ms to 10,000. I need to select a wait for ready as a complete, or timeout ms as int32 dot max value, or wait for ready equals to interactive. Now the answer is basically the wait for ready to interactive. Why? Because whenever these text boxes and buttons are interactive, then the bot should perform the actions on it without checking that the whole application is get loaded or not. So the answer is basically the wait for ready equals to interactive. Now let's move to the option 4. Now you are already aware of it, like where exactly these wait for ready properties are. You will go to the properties basically in the target. You have to maximize it, and then when you click here, you will find it non-interactive and complete. So from here we have to choose it, basically the wait for ready property. Now let's move to the question number 4. Question 4 is, while automating an installation wizard, a pop-up window may or may not appear. What can you use to close the window without stopping the workflow? Now there is a situation where a pop-up window may or may not appear. Then basically what we have to do, what implementation we have to do in the code, is using a click activity with the ContinueOnError property set to true. Use a click activity inside a try catch activity. Use a click activity and set its timeout property to 30 seconds. Now use a click activity and set timeout 30 seconds will not help to handle this pop-up, because it will wait for 30 seconds but it will not handling it. But if you use the continue property and set to true, that means if the pop-up is appeared, it will going to click it. If the pop-up is not appear, it will throw an exception, but it will going to continue on the next activity. So this seems correct. Let's move to the next B part. Use click activity inside a try catch activity. Now this is also correct. Let's assume there is any click activity, and if that particular element is appeared, it will going to click, right? If pop-up is appeared, it will click, but if pop-up is not appear, that means the exception will occur, and in the catch we are going to handle it. So A and B is the correct answer. For this, let's go to the studio. Let me create one sequence here. Sorry, let me create the sequence, not flowchart. I'll write down as a test. Now if you see here, I'll write down, I'll just put the Google. I'll take click. I'll put a right line just to check so that the bot is moving to the next activity. Now if you see this click input, just assume that this is basically not a click but a pop-up. Now if this pop-up is present here, let's assume that this pop-up is present here. What we can do, we can inspect this, cancel. Now this will going to click on the cancel button. but if it is not present, it will still move ahead. Let's run this. It just clicked on the cancel button. Now if I'm going to run it again, this is the question, right? It may appear or may not appear. So right now it's not appearing. Now the bot will going to fail, but it will continue to the next activity in that case. So and this is fine, like this is what we want. If the pop-up is there, bot should not fail in that case. It should move ahead basically. That's what we have implemented here. It's waiting for 30 seconds as I have put the timeout. I have basically we have a default timeout of 30 seconds, so it have to wait for 30 seconds. Now if you see the start and end logs has maintained, basically it crossed from here. Now this is the one way to do it. The another way to do it is just put it into the try catch. Now when you put it into the try catch, what will happen if this element is not appear or this pop-up is not appear? It will not going to throw an exception. It will come out basically. It will wait for 30 seconds. Let me make it 5 seconds because I don't want to wait it for 30 seconds every time. I'll make it 5 seconds for now. Let me run it. If you see the pop-up is not here, basically the cancel button pop-up is not here. So what the bot will do, bot will going to continue to this activity. It handled it here, come to catch basically, and prints the end basically. So it has printed start and end. So these are the both ways to do it to achieve this particular thing. So the answer is A and B in this case. Now the last question is question 5. So is there any way to hide the execution of one activity in the logs? Yes, by changing the min level property of the execution logger from nlog.config file. Okay, no, but the logs can be manually edited. No, that's not correct. We don't prefer to manually edit the logs. Yes, by checking the private property of the activity that is to be hidden. Now for each activities we have a property, basically a property which is showing that private here, right? If we check this property as a private, that means we're not going to see the, it will going to hide the execution of one activity in the logs. Basically the question is whether is how basically we can hide the execution log. So this is the way. If you make it private, you will not going to see the logs basically. So this is the correct answer, C, for in this case. Now this is it for the activities and properties. I'll come up with a new topic in the next video. By the time, thank you everyone, and thanks for watching my video. Have a great day. Bye.